Football, the game that so many of us love to watch and enjoy. But why is this sport getting worse? Bigger contracts, more camps, bigger technology, just everything that exists that should make this sport bigger, better, the best that it could be. But it's getting worse. And I'm going to discuss my opinions about why this sport is getting worse.
You've got some EddSplaining to do.
But even though football is getting worse, we can still enjoy it. We can still enjoy that there are teams that are great, there are coaches that are great, there are elite athletes. But despite all of that, we don't want football to become like an all-star game where the best player, the best players are only seen during special events. We want to see our teams win. We don't want to see our teams lose. So throughout this whole process of football, we need to think about what made it worse and what would make it great again. I mean, we may have our favorite players, we may have, like coaches, we may have if we like college football, we're tied to a college or university, pro team based on where we live, even high school where we win, our kids win, or whomever, whatever. But we can enjoy things about the game, but why is this game still getting worse despite the things I mentioned that make football great? So, when the NFL draft concluded not too long ago, and for some guys, it will be the greatest day of their lives, and for some teams, it may be the biggest regret to their lives because they're drafting players who, if they don't succeed, if the team does not succeed, then those guys get fired and get replaced. But the NFL is the final exam. It's high school, it's college, it's pro, if we take things linearly. So the problem with the NFL being a final exam is that when failure takes place in front of millions of people's eyes, we see the failure, but we don't see what led to the failure. We don't see what was skipped at the lower levels. In Little League, Youth League, whatever you want to call it, in high school or even in college. So you get to the NFL, the place of maximum exposure. We see the failure, but the failure that exists in the NFL was likely there in college, likely there in high school. So when it comes to high school and college, there's that win now culture. A lot of coaches, they may think that their wins and losses are based on the athletes they have on the team. You may have heard the phrase, sometimes it's X's and O's and sometimes it's Jimmy and Joe's. X's and O's would be the strategy, the tips, the skills, the chess match, and the Jimmy and Joe's are the players. It's a mix of both, but a great coach can maximize the talent of his players, even if they're not the best athletes. So, of course, you need great athletes, but coaching obviously matters. But a lot of coaches, especially at the high school level, they think that their success depends on the Jimmy and Joe's. Development that was skipped at the high school level can show up at the college level, even if they even get to that point. And who knows, there may be more college athletes if they were properly developed in high school or in youth football. And in college, the same win-now culture, there could be gimmicky offenses and different ways to win, but the goal isn't always necessarily to get someone to the next level, to the NFL. So when these coaches have these contracts, they need to win now. And if they win in gimmicky ways, so be it. But it doesn't mean that that's best for the athlete. And so with the NIL and the transfer portal, guys, they're just chasing money and opportunities. They're not always chasing which coach gives them the best chance to develop on the football field and off the football field, because those things do matter. And I've discussed that in a different episode on another channel about why football is getting worse and the old development cycle, where specifically at the pro level, you had Brett Favre, and then you had Aaron Rodgers, and then you had Jordan Love. Love sat behind Rodgers, Rodgers sat behind Favre. There were moments where guys would develop. Instead, now, what happens with this win-out culture, you're paying millions and millions of dollars, more money than ever, to these current NFL players, rookies. And if they don't perform immediately, coaches get fired. So development gets skipped at the pro level, the college level, and at the high school level. And someone pays the price. And even with college, these coaches who get these large contracts, some of these universities are in perpetual cycle where they constantly lose. They can't attract the best athletes. They can't attract the best coaches because they're paying a buyout from a former coach that they shouldn't have hired. There are plenty of examples of this. So as I mentioned earlier, the lack of development could be traced back to youth football. So just imagine that if these coaches at the youth level prepared the guys more, they'll be ready to play in high school. And if high school coaches taught and developed guys, there'll be more Division I athletes. And then if the win-now culture in college didn't just incentivize coaches to win at any means necessary, maybe you have more guys who will get taught more and be better prepared for the NFL. Sometimes you have NFL coaches trying to undo bad habits that the guys are taught in high school or in youth football. But the problem is that a lot of people want to outsource that responsibility or kick the can down the road to the next level. And it could be the coaches who want to kick it off. High school, you can get so far, let the college coach fix it. College can only go so far, let the pro coach fix it, if they even get that far. But we'll see about that. So 7-on-7 football has its benefits, but the problem is that 7-on-7 is a supplement, and the supplement is being treated as the main meal. So you have your supplements, you have your protein shakes, you have your creatine, you have this and that, but they're called supplements for a reason because they are to supplement. They're not the main course. They're not what you should be basing your whole nutrition or meal plan on. 7-on-7 cannot be the meal. It's a supplement. 7-on-7 is what? 7 guys against 7 guys. On offense, you have your center snapping the ball to the quarterback. That's your first 2. And then you have 5 eligible receivers. And on defense, you have 1 free rusher and 6 guys in coverage, depending on your rules and where you're at. But it helps with timing with quarterbacks and receivers, but it doesn't teach real football. It doesn't teach tackling. It doesn't teach discipline. It doesn't teach the stressors that go on throughout the game. So that's why you see it a lot of times on Instagram and on Facebook. It's highlights. It's cool, but it's a supplement. It's not the main meal. And then you will have these 7-on-7 stars who aren't fully developed football players because they treated the supplement as the main meal. And that's not how it works if you want to get to where you want to get to. And going back to, like I said earlier, about high school and college, that win-now culture. Because if you don't perform, someone gets fired. So how do coaches balance trying to win and keep their jobs while also trying to develop the guys? Once again, some say it's X's and O's and others will say it's Jimmy and Joe's, but it's a mix of both. And a coach can't say, well, we can't win unless we have the very best players every single year. Even in college, you're not going to have a team full of blue chip 5-star recruits. In high school, it's going to be the same. So someone could say, oh, we can't win a state championship unless we have a team full of 5-star recruits, future, college recruits. You got to coach, especially with these guys 14 to 17, 18 years old. These coaches may be the only male figure in their boys' lives or the main one that the guys will look up to. So when you're not developing these guys, it doesn't just hurt them on the field, it hurts them off the field. Development isn't just about becoming the best possible football player that you can be. It should be about helping develop these men, helping develop these boys into men, developing them for their next level, whether it's college, whether it's the corporate world, whether it's somewhere in a blue collar area. It doesn't matter. Guys aren't being developed, and that lack of development is seen at every level of the game. And again, that lack of development is seen at the NFL level. You're paying a man tens of millions of dollars. You're throwing a quarterback into the fire, and you expect him to immediately succeed, immediately take the team to the playoffs. If he doesn't have a great rookie year, then they want to say he's a bust. But if he's drafted high, he's going to a bad team, which more than likely has more holes on it than Swiss cheese. So you draft this guy high and think that, hey, he's supposed to be doing something special. But his team has so many holes on it, and he can only do so much. But how do we balance that win now culture with expectations of reality? And that's the problem. Like I said earlier, the old days where you could have a quarterback sit behind another quarterback and then his successor sat behind him. Those days are long gone. I mean, even Phillip Rivers sat behind Drew Brees for a moment in San Diego. So it's just not with football, it's society as a whole. Society wants the maximum results with the least amount of time and effort involved. So when it comes to athleticism, again, with the high school level, this guy, he's bigger, he's stronger, he's faster, he hit puberty quicker. You have some guy who's 6'4" 240 pounds, and he's a big time receiver, tight end. So he dominates against guys in high school who will likely be insurance salesmen or guys who are working in offices. But when the field is leveled in college, you'll get a bigger idea of whether he can play or not. So coaches are looking at the athleticism instead of what it actually takes. Development. The biggest, the fastest, the strongest, the most athletic does not always mean he's the best, especially when he has sloppy or lackluster fundamentals. And you can see that with wide receivers who they can run fast, they can catch or whatever, but they're not willing to go get a safety or linebacker on a block because that's not glamorous. The moment of truth can happen with those wide receivers when it comes time for the big payday. They didn't do the extra. They were a cancer in the locker room. They were divas, as people like to call receivers. Me, I, nah, give me the ball. So they're in there for the glitz and the glam, but to get down dirty, go take on a linebacker, go take on a safety, and spring your running back for a touchdown, a lot of them don't want to do that. What was skipped in development always shows up later. And as with anything else, we'll see the final results. Until next time, because there's always some explaining to do.